The approaching storm. The crimson bridge of the Vextheri battle cruiser Eternal Conquest thrummed with the energy of 1,000 victories. High Commander Zelkoth stood before the massive viewing screen, his 6 eyes studying the star charts with practiced precision. For 3,000 years, the Vextheri Empire had expanded across 17 galaxies, bringing order to chaos, subjugating primitive species, and harvesting resources with ruthless efficiency. Status report, Zelkoth commanded, his voice carrying the weight of countless worlds conquered. All systems optimal, High Commander, responded Sub-Commander Vectress, her crystalline form shimmering as she manipulated the holographic controls. The next target has been identified. Third planet from star designation 4871b. Local inhabitants call it Earth. Zelkoth's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Analysis. Technological level. Early space age. Nuclear capabilities. Present but limited. Unified planetary government. Absent. Military strength. Fragmented among multiple nation-states. Projected resistance. Minimal. The High Commander moved closer to the display, his armored exoskeleton reflecting the light from the star map. Earth appeared unremarkable. A blue-green sphere orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Just another primitive world to add to their collection. Begin standard reconnaissance protocols, Zelkoth ordered. Deploy the infiltration probes. I want complete analysis of their communication networks, military installations, and social hierarchies within 3 solar cycles. As the Vextheri fleet positioned itself in the outer reaches of Earth's solar system, hidden behind the gas giant they would later learn was called Neptune, the crew settled into their familiar routine. This was just another conquest, another species to be cataloged and controlled. But something was different this time. 3 days into their surveillance, Intelligence Officer Kenturi requested an urgent meeting with the High Commander. As Zelkoth entered the analysis chamber, he immediately noticed the officer's unusual demeanor. Kenturi's usually steady bioluminescent patterns were flickering erratically, a sign of deep confusion among their species. Report, Zelkoth commanded. High Commander, we've completed our initial analysis of Earth's communication networks. The findings are unusual. A holographic display activated, showing a timeline of human technological development. Kenturi's tentacles moved gracefully as she highlighted specific points. Most species follow a predictable pattern. Agricultural revolution, industrial development, nuclear physics, then space exploration, typically spanning several millennia. The humans compressed this timeline to mere centuries. Impressive, but not unprecedented, Zelkoth noted. That's what we thought initially, but then we found this. The display shifted to show footage that made even the battle-hardened commander pause. Mushroom clouds rising over cities, entire landscapes turned to glass. The raw power of atomic destruction unleashed not against alien invaders, but against their own kind. They discovered nuclear fission and, within the same generation, used it as a weapon against themselves, Kenturi explained. Not once, but twice in actual combat, followed by thousands of tests that poisoned their own planet. Zelkoth's primary eyes narrowed. Madness, or something else entirely. Look at this. The display changed again, showing humans in primitive spacesuits walking on their moon. Less than a quarter century after nearly destroying themselves, they reached their satellite, not for resources or military advantage, but for curiosity. The intelligence officer continued, her voice carrying notes of bewilderment. They knew the risks. The first astronauts had a significant probability of death. They went anyway. They'd broadcast it to their entire planet. They celebrated it. Show me their military capabilities, Zelkoth ordered, trying to make sense of these contradictions. The display filled with data that defied conventional logic. Humans had created enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet several times over. They had biological weapons that could erase their entire species, chemical weapons that turned the very air into death. And yet, they've signed treaties limiting these weapons. They've destroyed stockpiles. They maintain armies not just for conquest, but for peacekeeping. They send their warriors to protect people they've never met, in lands they'll never claim. Zelkoth's subarms began to twitch, a sign of deep thought. What of their entertainment? Their cultural transmissions? This is where things became even more puzzling. Kentari activated another set of displays, showing human media from across their history. They create stories about alien invasions, thousands of them. In these scenarios, they often face technologically superior forces, and somehow, impossibly, they imagine themselves winning, through sacrifice, ingenuity, or sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Propaganda, Zelkoth suggested. That's what we assumed. But these aren't government productions. Individuals create them. For entertainment, they pay to watch themselves fight against odds that should crush them. They celebrate last stands. They honor those who die protecting others. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vextheri had conquered species that were peaceful, warlike, advanced, and primitive. But they had never encountered a species that seemed to embrace paradox as a fundamental principle. "There's more," Kentari said quietly. "We intercepted this." The display shifted once more, showing a golden disk with strange symbols. Audio began to play. Mathematical sequences, natural sounds, music, and greetings in dozens of languages. This is one of two identical messages they launched into space decades ago. They call it the Voyager Golden Record. It contains their location, their biology, their culture. They sent it into the void, not knowing who might find it. Zelkoth studied the images etched on the disk. A man and woman, biological details of their species, their position in the galaxy, all broadcast to anyone who might be listening. They're either the most naive species we've encountered, Zelkoth mused, or the most confident. To announce oneself to the universe without the ability to defend against it. The analysis team has been debating this for cycles. Kentari admitted. Some believe it's ignorance. Others think it's a trap. But there's a third possibility, which is hope, pure, irrational hope. They sent this message knowing the dangers, understanding the risks, and choosing to believe that whatever found them might be friend rather than foe. Zelkoth turned away from the display, his mind racing. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vextheri had operated on simple principles. Find, assess, conquer. But these humans defied assessment. They split atoms and reached for stars. They created weapons of apocalypse and messages of peace. They fought each other with savage brutality and established laws to protect the wounded. Convene the War Council, Zelkoth ordered finally. Full assembly. We need to discuss this, carefully. As Kentari left to carry out the order, Zelkoth remained in the analysis chamber, staring at the image of Earth floating in the holographic display. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't fear. The Vextheri feared nothing. It wasn't respect. Respect was earned through victory. It was, perhaps, uncertainty, and that was the most disturbing feeling of all. The golden disk continued to spin in the display, its message echoing across the cosmos. We are here. We are human. We hope you come in peace. Such a message from a species that had weapons to crack their own planet. The paradox was profound enough to give even the Vextheri pause. As the War Council assembled, Earth continued its rotation, its inhabitants unaware that their fate hung in the balance, not because of their weakness, but because of something far more complex. They had created a puzzle that even the galaxy's greatest conquerors struggle to solve. How do you conquer a species that has already imagined its own destruction 1,000 times over, yet still chooses to reach for the stars with open hands? The revelation. The War Council chamber of the Eternal Conquest had witnessed the planning of 1,000 campaigns. Its walls, made from the compressed cores of conquered worlds, had echoed with strategies that brought entire civilizations to their knees. But never had the chamber seen such heated debate as it did now. The humans are clearly unstable, declared War Master Kraxon, his battle scars glowing with bioluminescent intensity. A species that develops planet-killing weapons before achieving interstellar travel is a threat to galactic stability. We should strike before they become a larger problem. But their technology is primitive compared to ours, countered Fleet Admiral Zephyx. Their nuclear weapons are crude. Their spacecraft are barely able to reach their own moon. What threat could they pose to the Vextheri Empire? High Commander Zelkoth listened in silence as the debate raged. Around the crystalline council table, the Empire's greatest military minds struggled with the same paradoxes that had troubled him since viewing the intelligence report. Science advisor Nexus projected a hologram into the center of the chamber. I've conducted deep analysis of their historical patterns. The humans have a concept they call mutual assured destruction. They created weapons so terrible that using them ensures their own annihilation. And this actually brought them a form of peace. Madness, Kraxon spat. Or brilliance, Nexus replied. They turned their own capacity for destruction into a shield. They survived not despite their weapons, but because of them. This requires a level of psychological complexity we've rarely encountered. Cultural analyst Viridian spoke next, her form shimmering with the colors of deep thought. I studied their stories, their myths, their entertainment. They have a recurring theme: the underdog victory, David defeating Goliath. Small bands of warriors holding against overwhelming odds. They don't just accept these scenarios, they celebrate them. Fantasy, dismissed Kraxon. Perhaps, but consider their actual history. Viridian activated another display, showing human conflicts throughout the ages. They've demonstrated this pattern repeatedly. Smaller forces defeating larger ones through innovation, determination, or sheer refusal to surrender. They call it asymmetric warfare. Zelkoth finally spoke. Show them the message again. The golden disc appeared once more, its contents displayed for all to see. Mathematics, music, images of humans and their world, greetings in dozens of languages. The location of Earth marked clearly among the stars. This is what puzzles me most, Zelkoth continued. They sent this without the ability to defend against whatever might find it. They included their weaknesses alongside their strengths, their exact location, everything an invader would need. Clearly, they're naive, Kraxon insisted. Or perhaps, suggested Nexus quietly, they're playing a game we don't understand. The council turned to her. She manipulated the display, showing Earth's defensive preparations. They call it HFY, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They've been listening to the cosmos for decades. They've imagined every possible first contact scenario. Peaceful, hostile, everything in between. And in their hostile scenarios, Zelkoth asked, they fight. They use guerrilla tactics. They unite as a species. They sacrifice themselves to save their world. They find ways to turn our advantages against us. They've war-gamed invasions by technologically superior forces thousands of times. Intelligence Officer Kinturi added to the display. There's something else. Their biological studies. They evolved on what they call the death world. High gravity, tectonic instability, extreme weather, predators, diseases. They didn't just survive. They thrived. They adapted to every challenge their planet threw at them. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vextheri had conquered peaceful species and warlike ones, but they had never faced a species forged in the crucible of a hostile world, armed with weapons of apocalypse, and possessed of an imagination that had already envisioned every possible form of invasion. I've run combat simulations, admitted War Master Kraxon reluctantly. Traditional invasion scenarios show acceptable victory probabilities, but when I factor in their psychological profiles, their history of asymmetric warfare, their willingness to use extreme measures, the calculations become uncertain. They have a saying, Viridian noted, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Historical analysis shows that humans, when faced with external threats, have an unusual tendency to unite across previous divisions. Their world wars ended with bitter enemies becoming allies within a generation. Zelkoth stood, his impressive height commanding attention. We've conquered through superior technology and overwhelming force. But these humans, they've survived through adaptation and unpredictability. They've turned their own destructive nature into a tool for survival. They prepare for war while hoping for peace. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. For the first time in our empire's history, I recommend caution. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. The Vextheri Empire recommending caution. It was unprecedented. "What do you propose?" asked Fleet Admiral Zephyx. "Continued observation. Deep analysis. We need to understand them better before we act. Their golden record, it's either the greatest naivety we've encountered or the most sophisticated trap ever devised. Until we know which, we hold position." As the Council debated this recommendation, halfway across the solar system, something unexpected happened. A radio telescope on Earth, part of the SETI program, detected an anomaly. A signal that didn't match any natural phenomenon. A pattern that suggested intelligence. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen in disbelief. After decades of searching, could this be it? She ran the signal through every verification protocol. It remained consistent, artificial, alien. But the signal wasn't trying to hide. It was broadcasting on multiple frequencies, as if wanting to be found. And it was coming from the outer solar system, beyond Neptune's orbit. As per protocol, Dr. Chen notified the International Committee for First Contact. Within hours, every major government on Earth knew about the signal. The response was swift, and surprisingly to the Vextheri observers, largely unified. Instead of panic, Earth's nations activated protocols they'd been refining for decades. Military forces went to high alert, but didn't mobilize aggressively. Scientists worked together across national boundaries. The United Nations convened an emergency session. What happened next stunned the Vextheri Council. Earth broadcast a response. Not a threat or a plea, but a message that matched the spirit of their golden record. It included mathematical proofs, music from every culture, and a simple statement in hundreds of languages. "We see you. We don't know your intentions, but we choose to begin with hope. If you come in peace, you'll find friends. If you come in war, you'll find a species that has survived everything our world could throw at us. The choice is yours. We are ready for either." High Commander Zelkoth read the translation of the message 3 times. Around him, the War Council sat in stunned silence. "They know we're here," Kenturi confirmed. "They're not trying to hide or run. They're talking to us. And they're simultaneously offering friendship and warning," noted Viridian. "It's remarkably sophisticated. They acknowledge both possibilities without committing to either assumption." Zelkoth made his decision. "Open a communication channel. Direct transmission." "Sir." Kraxon looked shocked. "We've never initiated peaceful contact with a pre-conquest species." "We've never encountered a species like this either," Zelkoth replied. "They've changed the game. We should at least acknowledge that." The message the Vextheri sent was simple. "We are the Vextheri Empire. We have received your message. We are considering our response." On Earth, the reply caused a mixture of celebration and trepidation. First contact, the moment humanity had imagined in 1,000 different ways. But the alien message was cryptic. Considering their response. What did that mean? Dr. Chen worked with linguists to craft Earth's next message. It had to be perfect. Too aggressive, and they might provoke an attack. Too passive, and they might invite conquest. The response they sent showcased human ingenuity. Consideration is wise. We've considered too, for generations. We've imagined this moment in stories, in dreams, in nightmares. We've prepared for friends and foes alike. While you consider, perhaps we could exchange knowledge. Mathematics is universal. Music transcends species. Understanding begins with small steps. On the eternal conquest, cultural analyst Viridian translated the message and smiled, an unusual expression for her species. They're offering to teach us, a pre-stellar species offering to share knowledge with a galactic empire. The audacity is refreshing. Over the following days, a remarkable exchange began. Earth sent mathematical theorems, musical compositions, and scientific data. The Vextheri, almost despite themselves, found themselves responding in kind, not with military intelligence, but with their own mathematics, their own music. War Master Kraxen watched the exchange with growing unease. This is unprecedented. We're treating them as equals. Perhaps, Zelkoth mused, that's exactly what they've achieved. Not through technology or military might, but through something else. They've made us question our own methods. No species has ever done that before. As the cultural exchange continued, something shifted in the Vextheri command structure. Younger officers began studying human history not for conquest, but out of genuine curiosity. Scientists started comparing notes with their human counterparts. Even military strategists found themselves fascinated by human concepts like peace through strength and trust but verify. High Commander Zelkoth called one final council meeting. The chamber was different now, less certain, more thoughtful. We came here for conquest, he began. We found something else, a species that defies our classifications. They're not naive prey, nor are they advanced rivals. There's something new, something that makes us reconsider not just this invasion, but our entire approach. What are you suggesting? Asked Kraxen, though his tone had lost its earlier belligerence. I'm suggesting that the humans have given us a gift, not through their technology or their resources, but through their example. They've shown us that strength can coexist with hope. That preparation for war doesn't preclude the possibility of peace, that a species can look at the vast, dangerous universe and choose to say hello rather than hide. Zelkoth activated the display one final time, showing Earth in all its blue-green beauty. I propose we accept their offer of knowledge exchange, not as conquerors and conquered, but as, what's the human word? Colleagues, perhaps even, eventually, friends. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vextheri Empire chose dialogue over domination. On Earth, the news was received with a mixture of joy and disbelief. The message from the Vextheri was formal but historic. People of Earth, we accept your offer of peaceful exchange. We come not as conquerors, but as fellow travelers among the stars. You have shown us that strength and hope can coexist. We wish to learn more. Dr. Sarah Chen read the message to the assembled United Nations. As applause filled the chamber, she thought about all the stories humanity had told itself about first contact, all the preparations for invasion, all the weapons built and treaties signed. In the end, it wasn't their weapons that saved them. It wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their stubborn, paradoxical insistence on preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. It was their willingness to face the universe with both a sword and an olive branch, ready for either war or peace. The golden record still traveled through space, carrying its message of hope to distant stars. But now, humanity had received its own message in return, not of conquest or subjugation, but of curiosity and respect. As the first official Vextheri delegation prepared to visit Earth, High Commander Zelkoth reflected on the irony. They had come to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had discovered something far more valuable, a new perspective on existence itself. The humans called it peace through strength. The Vextheri were beginning to understand what that meant. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in conquest, but in recognizing when conquest itself is the wrong goal. Earth spun on, no longer alone in the universe, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, other species would eventually hear the story of the empire that came to conquer and stayed to learn. The story of humanity's first contact, a species too stubborn to surrender, too hopeful to hide, and too complex to conquer. The invasion was ready. Then a single message changed everything, not through force or fear, but through the most human of qualities, the audacious belief that understanding is possible, that peace is achievable, and that even the vast, dangerous universe might hold friends yet undiscovered. The stars looked different now. For both species, they held not just dangers to face, but possibilities to explore together.